things happen. You had to believe in it. I wasn't a garden shed Joe that did 9 to 5, come home and spend the weekends pottering around. I felt I was onto something, and I'd work Sundays to get the 2 double bubble, but then you could bank them hours and instead of taking them as wages. So I'd bank them hours, so I'd use them eventually, banking them hours, to take time off to go to boxing shows or sparring or up and down the country. I've heard Anthony say to people, Joe hasn't just turned up and he's been given it all. I remember Joe absolutely turning up to the gym, absolutely shattered and working out. Crawler was there, he knows. It's not just been given, that the hard work and everything was years ago.
Right, so we're back for another edition of the PathFinders podcast, and we've got a man who's been trying to get in for a very long time. Joe, I've known you for around 6 or 7 years now, and we've never actually done an interview talking about you. It's always been about Tasha, Crawler, the Smith brothers, Paul Butler. So now's an opportunity to delve into your life and your story, because it really is tremendous how much you've achieved, how far you've come in relatively such a short space of time, really. When you go back to the 90s, when it was the amateur days, to balancing a full-time job back in 2008, 2009, to leaving that to where you are now, breeding world champions left, right and centre, every belt that you can imagine in that gym. So let's go back to the beginning. What were your earliest memories of the sport of boxing?
The earliest, I think like everyone's when they were growing up then, in that era, was watching Muhammad Ali. Watching Muhammad Ali with my dad. Dad was a huge boxing fan. And Ali, because he was so popular, he was the world heavyweight champion and everything that he said. And as a child, you sat there watching it, and yeah, Muhammad Ali. And then from that then, all the other fighters, John Conte from the UK at the time, he was world champion. I think I remember walking to primary school and it being, it was on the radio in the house that he'd won the WBC title, and my dad was a big John Conte fan. And that was it really. At the time, that must have been around 8, 9, I was doing mixed martial arts or karate, anyway, it should go to karate. Yeah. And then I got to around age 10, I was like, I'm in 3rd grade, another brown, one more before you go into a black belt, and which was in the playground, and someone mentioned that there'd been a boxing gym opening up at Wythenshawe Forum. So I went home and said to my dad, there's a boxing gym opening up at the Forum, I want to pack karate in and I'll go to the boxing. So he says, all right then, I'll take you down. So I went down, and the person whose gym it was that was open, it was Jimmy Egan. So that's more known now as Jimmy Egan's boxing gym in Wythenshawe. Back then it was known at Wythenshawe Forum. And I went there and, like I say, stuck with it. And like I say, the rest is history.
And what age were you when you had your first amateur fight? And do you remember those thoughts and feelings and those nerves beforehand? The smell of the place where you're in, the sweat pouring off you, the feeling of taking that first punch. I bet you're the type of person that would remember everything very vividly.
Well, I used to. It's going a little bit now, Jamal, right? Do you know what I mean? But I remember at the time, it was the club's one of the first shows that we went to. And one of my mates from school, it was over in Middleton at the Langley Spartan Amateur Boxing Club show. I think it was at a Middleton Working Men's Club, Labour Club, something like that. And as you said, you walk in and there's just a sea of smoke. Everyone's out to smoke, then want to drink, alcohol, everything else. And then you're just seeing these trophies on the stage going, wow, is that your trophy if you win? And that's the Loser's Trophy. So I was aged 11 at the time. I was like 5 stone 12. And my mate from school boxed first, a lad called Peter Cookson, and he only weighed 3.5 stone, something like that. And he got beat. And then I remember I was on a couple of fights later, and one of the coaches at the time, Brian Sanderson, who was warming up. Anyway, biggish fella, anyway, just give me a little slap across the cheeks going, listen, none of that from you. And I'm like, aged 11, going out to this working men's club, a load of grown men watching, my mate had been beat. I was like, no pressure then, like, do you know what I mean? Went out there, and ironically, I fought a kid called Kevin Morgan. And the club he was boxing for was Gallagher Boys.
Oh wow, okay.
That's mad, that, isn't it? And then anyway, went in there, boxed, and I won. I got the winner's trophy, and I was Jimmy Egan's first ever winner for ever. So that's nice to be a part of history of that when his first club. Obviously, Jim Egan's boxing gym has gone on since and now is known as Jim Egan's Boxing Academy in Benchill. So, yeah, I was hugely proud, got the trophy. Henry Cooper came to the gym a couple of weeks later. We had a picture with him. There was a picture in the Pink. Then there used to be a Manchester Evening News sports paper called the Pink. You'd get that with all the football results. So there was a picture of me and Henry Cooper in there, and me saying 5 stone 11 and winning. And we still got them scrapbooks with them in it. So yeah, that was it. But the nerves before it, my mate getting beat, getting a slap off the coach, and yeah, it went all right in the end. To be fair, yeah. So yeah, it was good.
All that, though, is like the building blocks for what you're experiencing now, because things are never going to go to plan. And I speak to fighters a lot. Like, I was speaking to a fighter last night, and he had the news during his weight cut that his trainer had broke both legs a day before the fight, and he has to comprehend that. And then there was a major traffic jam in the build-up to the fight. So even at a young age, you're learning, like, there's not necessarily going to be things that I want to hear in the build-up to a fight, or things aren't going to necessarily go my way, but you've got to keep that tunnel vision. You've got to keep fixated on the task and goal at hand. And you mentioned your dad and you mentioned Jimmy Egan. Is it fair to say that they were the two biggest influences and biggest role models in your life growing up?
I think my mum. Can't mismake my mum. It's my mum's birthday today.
Okay. Happy birthday to
her. She worked very hard. Listen, there wasn't much money in the house. My dad was always working hard out on the roads, and my mum was holding down 2 or 3 jobs down. At the time, I was the oldest of 5. I've got 4 sisters, so you can imagine my mum getting us ready for primary school. I'm 10, my other sister's 8, 6, 4, and a 2-year-old, no car, and having to walk from Benchill all the way over to St Peter's on Fairbank Road with 5 kids and back again. And before she did that, she'd been up to Civic Centre and done a cleaning job, then different things. So my mum was always a massive fan and support, and my dad taking me, and they all played the part. And like I say, Jimmy Egan, he was the man that took me off the streets, had faith in me, and like I say, we only knew the estate, Benchill, at the time. All of a sudden, we're in minibuses and we're going to shows in North Wales, and we're going to Leeds, and we're going to Liverpool, and we're going to hotels, and we're seeing chandeliers and all different types of things. So I'll always be eternally grateful for Jimmy Egan and what he's done. And for me and everyone in that area, it come to a time then when I was like 16, 17, and I wanted to move to a senior club. At the time, Champs Camp Moss Side was starting up, and I went and joined there and met Phil Martin. So Jimmy, my dad, my mum and Phil Martin, I say the 4 biggest people that have had influence on my life. And
you were ticking over with the amateur fights at the time, and you did want to turn professional at one point, as every amateur does. But I did see that there was a chat with your father where he sort of said, look, there's going to be no money in that. You're going to need to get a proper job. You're only going to make money if you're like Muhammad Ali, the equivalent of that generation. And to hear something like that from your dad, most people would take it as a negative to deter you away from the sport of boxing, but your heart lied somewhere else from that point on, didn't it? So what was that initial conversation like, if I'm correct with that?
It was very hard, really, because I was leaving school. There isn't like there was now a GB or a team set up or funding or anything like that. You left school and you got a YTS, which was like £17.50 at the time. If you didn't get a YTS, you get a job. I wanted to go into law. And my dad said, you know, you're coming on the roads with me. So I went working on the roads with him, went flagging and curbing. I remember doing Busby Way, Old Trafford, and I was fighting that night down in Wales. I think it was like 17 at the time, 17, but I was working with Dad, flagging and curbing. And I remember he was doing it and I was passing him something. Anyway, I remember this like gold Sierra, Cosworth, whatever, pull up at the lights up at the top near Lou Macari's Chippy. We're halfway down from Lou Macari's Chippy at the top to where it is at the bottom, halfway up there. And I went, Dad, Dad, Dad. He went, what? I went, there's Gary Bailey. There's Gary Bailey. And my dad went, sod Gary Bailey, get your head down here, pass me the shovel there or something like that. Then 2 minutes later, Jesper Olsen went past. Anyway, the old man lost it, saying, listen, they don't come out here watching me. Why am I got to stand and watch them? Do you understand? All that stuff. So my dad was proper old school, do you know what I mean? Big Irish family. And he was always out, no, you're out working with me and we'll have a van and it'll be Gallagher and Son and all that type of stuff. And I felt after a while working with that, and my dad was at an age, and I thought, wow. And it was like hail, rain or snow. We were out grafting, and I just thought, so if your back's broke, you're only like 50 or whatever you are, your back's broke for all that hard work. That ain't the life for me. Do you understand? I wanted to do the coaching, I wanted to do the boxing, and that was it really. And I just thought, I'm not doing that no more. And like I say, continued a bit of ball boxing, and then went into the coaching side of it. But at that time, that's when I said to my dad, I might turn pro then to earn money instead of doing this. And he went, listen, got the boxing news out. And at the time, I think Barry McGuigan was world champion. And he said, how many millionaires are in that there? And at the time, boxing news ratings, like 600 fighters in it. And Barry McGuigan there, and I think Bruno was coming through. And he says, yeah, he says, around a handful, 5 of them. So it's hard to say, he says, but you're no Bruno and you're no McGuigan. He said, so, either come out on the roads with me. And that's it. So that they were the type of conversations, so I just thought, right, okay, then sound, and that was it. That's why I didn't turn professional, and I went into coaching then.
And when did you first spot those attributes within yourself of being a coach and a manager? Because didn't you help when you was a teenager, the younger boys, when they were like 8, 9, 10?
That's right, yeah. So when you're at an amateur club, and at the time you're getting to the age of 14 and 15, the kids that are coming through age 10, 11, and you're helping. I used to be at the gym dead early for the kids' classes, because Jimmy used to give me a lift in. So I'd be there at 10, so Jimmy would say, give us a hand with this, and take him on the pads there, and all stuff like that. So then we had some good kids coming through. One was Eddie Nevins, who was a really good, who, believe it or not, was my first professional boxing champion. Yet years ago, age 10 and 11, and I was like 15, 16, I was taking him on the pads. Just mad how the way the world works, isn't it? So just stuff like that, and I used to enjoy it, and then telling kids do this, and then I'd help Jimmy in the corner at a show and say to him beforehand, do this, and I just thought, do you know what? They're doing what I'm saying, and I'm reading things, and it just grew from that really then, and I just love boxing, being in and around boxing, but that at an early age there, I'd say around 14, 15, 16, helping that, I really felt a warmth in doing that, and them listening and then working, and you think, I can read a fight, a situation, and people's weaknesses, and learning to work out people and the habits.
And how difficult was it early on? And I say early on, but it was even back to 2008, 2009, like I mentioned, where you was balancing a full-time job essentially with coaching. So when you was just turning as an amateur boxing coach, what was it like? That sort of, I don't want to say it was a shock to you, because you're a workaholic now. So I guess having a busy schedule is never a shock to you. But what was it like balancing a full-time job, but at the forefront of your mind is always your fighters?
Yeah, I think near the end of the amateurs, I felt, because I took over Mossad ABC in 91, and then I finished amateur coaching in 2001, and that was with Steve Foster. He won 2 ABA titles on the bounce, went to the World quarterfinals, and then I turned pro with him in September 2001 at the Manchester Arena. So he was my first professional fight, Steve Foster Jr. The kids that I still had then in the amateurs were John Murray, were Joe Murray, so I still continued to train them amateurs as well, but as pros really, and that's why they all developed so quickly as they did. But to turn professional 2001, like you say, have a job, and I was working nights at the time. I was finishing, 7 o'clock in the morning, going home at 7:30, taking some of them on the track, then getting in the gym for around 11, 12 o'clock, training until 3, 4, then back in work at 7. And at the end of the week, I was just absolutely no good for no one. I was just like a walking zombie. And then I think it got to, 2000, as you said there, Eddie Nevins had won a title, John Murray had turned professional then. John Murray won the British, Matthew Macklin had won the British. And I said to the missus, I said, listen, I'm absolutely going to have a heart attack the way we're going here. I want to put everything into the boxing. I said, if I'm achieving this, working and only living on 3 nights sleep, 3 hours a night sleep, imagine what I can do full time. And the job here at the airport, it was a decent job. Do you know what I mean? It came with private health, bupa, a pension, double bubble over time, as in double rate. And the setup that they had there, I'd work Sundays to get the two double bubble, but then you could bank them hours and staking instead of taking them as wages. So I'd bank them hours. So I'd use them eventually, banking them hours, to take time off to go to boxing shows or sparring or up and down the country. So the missus would be moaning, you're going in working on a Sunday, you only have one day off for the weekend, but you're using it for your boxing. So that was a tough decision. And I just said to her, listen, just give me 5 years at it. If I don't crack it within the 5-10 years, I'll go back to it. I just feel like I'm onto something here, I'm good at something. And if it don't work, I'll go back and be what everyone else does, the job I do, everyone else can do. I says, but I want this opportunity to do it. And she wasn't happy about it, but I did it anyway. And listen, it paid off. And listen, we're here now.
Did you ever doubt yourself in the moments when, it sounded like you was on death's door at the end of each week, when you'd totally spent yourself and worked yourself silly? Did you ever think, am I going to get to where I'm going to go? And eventually it led to that decision, like you said, this needs to exit my life, this day job, I need to be 100% in it.
Listen, it was a hard decision. You've got to understand that I had 2 young children. Sophie would have been at that age, I think 5. Curtis would have been 10. We had a house, we had a mortgage. Mrs. was working. And then all of a sudden to turn in and go, listen, I'm packing it in. There's your salary gone. There's all your perks. There's the private health for the kids, the family, your pension, all gone. And we're going training professional fighters. So at the time, and I know, the fight once a month, 2 months. So the missus at the time used to say, so how much are you doing this week? Nothing really, like, do you know what I mean? Just trained. Well, that's a good job then, isn't it? Oh my God. And then another week, so how much are you doing this week? No, nothing. So what, you're in the gym 5 days this week, train everyone, and you're not being paid for nothing? No, I'll get it when they fight. And at that time, they're on British title money or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, will you give me a break? Just trust it and it'll go through it. And at them points, I thought, wow, it's like, and I said to her at the time, please don't not let me do it, because if I do, I feel like I resent you for the rest of my life, that you never let me go and do something that what I'm trying to do, and I'll be on my deathbed going, Joe, what? I didn't do what I wanted to do. And ultimately, it cost me my marriage, and that's it. But things happen, you have to believe in it. I wasn't a garden shed Joe that did 9 to 5, come home and spend the weekends pottering around. I felt I was onto something, and with what we were achieving with the fighters that we had at the time, and I knew what was coming off the conveyor belt, Joe Murray, 2008 Olympics, I thought to myself, no, we're onto something. And it was just, I wanted to give it a go, and I did do. And I think when you're that determined, you have that tunnel vision, nothing will stand in your way. I remember turning up at the gym one day, and Kerry Hayes goes, what are you doing here? I said, I've got Joe Murray sparring. He says, but I thought you were at your missus's dad's funeral. No, I've got Joe Murray sparring. Kerry's going, Joe, I think you really needed to be there. I'm like, well, what good am I? Like, should be all right. Do you know what I mean? It's the other mum's thing. It's just that total tunnel vision blinkered. And I've heard Anthony say to people, Joe hasn't just turned up and he's been given it all. I remember Joe, like, absolutely turned up to the gym, absolutely shattered and working out. Crawler was there. He knows. It's not just been given. The hard work and everything was years ago. Like anything in life, you've got to put it in. You get nothing handed to you on a plate, and you've got to go out there and do it.
So you mentioned early on in that conversation that initially 5 days a week work and you weren't bringing home much. So how did you turn that into a sustainable business? Because it's your full life now. You're absolutely flying. You've got the Joe Gallagher Academy. You've moved back to Champs Camp. You do punditry sometimes with Sky Sports. So you've got so many different avenues to make revenue for yourself and for your fighters. So how did that process come about to where it is today?
I don't know, it's like anything. One, you've got to cut your cloth to suit. And like you say, at the time, we always worked, we always saved a little bit of money, and that was it really. But I think my tolerance levels in a gym, I've always said when people join, you've got to want it as bad as me, because I want it bad. And if it isn't, then we can't work together. I was very fortunate to meet 2 lunatics in Crawler and Quigg that wanted it as badly as me, and that just ignited and lit the torch paper, and we never looked back. along the way. Obviously, the Smith brothers, Scott Cardle, Hosea Burton was one when I turned professional in 2001. He was only aged 11 and done the extra junior schoolboy final, aged 11. So I knew him coming through in 10, 11 years' time would turn professional. So all of them were still me amateurs that were coming off the conveyor belt. But it was very hard. It was very hard, really hard. Times were hard. And listen, we might have to take some loans and stuff like that. But it was just hard, and you just had to push with it and drive with it. And I used to say, listen, the train's going, whether you're on board or you're not on board. And there's people in boxing that try to, I don't think it's the appropriate word, but cock block you in certain situations. And I just think to myself, nah, there's more than one way of skinning a cat. If you can't do it that way, I'll do it that way. And people say, oh, Joe, you're upsetting this one and you're upsetting that one. And I'm thinking, nah, I'm not. I know what you're all up to, and this is it. And it was just, as many people tried to stop me, I just felt, nah, you're not. This is it. I'll find a way round it. I'll find a way for getting that kid in this place or getting that kid at that pace. And I didn't have the easiest ride, but there's been a lot of doubt. A lot of people saying, oh, he's only an amateur coach. What does he know about the pros? And, oh, he's only a regional coach. Oh, he's only a British title level coach. I've had it all the time. And it's just, as the saying goes, you have to be an elephant and just keep walking. And the hyenas and everyone comes mad and you just ignore them. You've just got to have that tunnel vision. And that's what I've had. And to make, I think one of the things that I've always done was always to try and make my family proud, my mum and dad proud. And, yeah.
You mentioned Crawler, Quigg. Those were your earliest fighters as a professional once you'd made that transition to full-time pro coach in 2009. What careers they had, and they both had their moments near enough on the same night. Unfortunately, Crawler got the draw on 2015. I think it was like June, wasn't it, when Quigg won his world title against Martinez. But later in the year, he got his moment. So see those guys achieve the glory and have those big fight nights that they did. What were your first thoughts on them when they first walked through your gym?
Crawler, I'd known Anthony for a while as an amateur coach, believe it or not. Whilst I was an amateur coach, I went up against Anthony in the schoolboys championships, and he was boxing against my kid Dean Fieldhouse in the Manchester final, I think it was. And Crawler beat my kid Dean. He had the experience, Crawler, but he had a good jab. And I went into the change rooms afterwards and says, good luck, son. You've done well there beating Dino, and I think you'll get to the schoolboy final this year. Whether you win it or not, I don't know, but you got a good jab and keep going. So that was my first recollection of meeting Anthony. And then during the time as an amateur, he used to come and train with me at the time when I was training John Murray. Anthony was still an amateur, used to come down and do some sparring with John Murray and Joe Murray. And at the time, John was flying. John won the British, John won the European. He'd fought Brandon Rios at Madison Square Garden. Macklin had won the British and fought Sturm over in Germany and was unlucky. And along that time, then Crawler came along. He'd already turned pro, had a few fights, was coming off a loss, and he wanted to join us. So it was great having Anthony. He was always a kid that I always admired from afar. I thought he was dedicated and he had a good work ethic about him. And then Scott Quigg, I'd had a few fights already as a professional from Brian Hughes, and he turned up at the gym one day with Paul Speak, and they said, would he be interested in taking him on? So yeah, I took him on, and both kids, like you say, they both wanted it as much as me, and though it's well known that how diligent they were in the training and how possessive they were, and possessed they were, I should say, and that just matched my mentality. And I think we just kept on pushing each other's capabilities as a coach and as a fighter up and up and up, and everything else benefited. Everyone else was brought up with them: the Smiths, Cardle, Hosea Burton, Callum Johnson, and we had a team that was just a full of winners and a full of focus and strong mentality.
Like you mentioned, you're renowned for breeding world champions. So I want to know what your feeling was when you won a first world title as a coach, and have you got used to it? Is it still the same buzz? Is it even better nowadays?
I think since Scott Quigg became world champion, yeah, it was good to say the words world champion. I was so happy for him and what it meant for him and his family. And being a pro coach is no different than being an amateur coach. When that kid has his first fight as an amateur. And then all of a sudden the parents are giving them fivers and the grannies are giving them presents and they get spoiled and a new pair of trainers and all that. It's no different when they're men and seeing the parents so happy and the family and the girlfriends. And I was really made up for Scott Quigg to become a world champion. And then the next one was Liam Smith in Manchester Arena, winning it in the ring against an American. And it was good because Liam Smith came to me off a loss. People said he's a good kid, but not sure, like, really. Crawler came to me. People said, oh, he's a nice kid, Anthony. Can't punch. Most people win a British, that's his level. And then Quigg, similar. Oh, he's all right, but I don't think he'll go much further past British. So straight away, them three type of kids, I was like, wow, right, I'll show yous. And it was like when Macklin came to me, he was coming off a draw. And people were thinking, oh, that's Macklin done. But his first fight with me, he beat Elcott for the British. Then he won the European. Then he fought Sturm. So it was very much, I used to say to her, it's like pimp my ride. It was like pimp my box at the gym. They'd come in and we'd put a new engine in them and would go again. And off we went. And that's how I looked at it. So to have, like I say, Macklin, Crawler, Beefer and Quigg then come to me and go on and fight on the world stage and become world champions. Macklin should have been that night, but didn't. It's just a huge satisfaction. Does it make it any less better now? No. I was just over the moon for Tasha at the weekend when she became a 2-weight world champion. And what I would say, them early days, I never really celebrated. When we were in the hype, we never really celebrated because I was in the gym Monday, on to the next one, the next weekend. Of late, when before Tasha became world champion, I said, right, from now on, after we've won, we're going back to the hotel we've stayed. We're all going to sit down and we've got to have a drink, one drink. After that, then, I'm going to say, right, okay, I'm off. It's your night, off you go. And it's just to sit down and remember, because usually it's Crawler's after party, he's gone, or Quigg's or anything else. And we never had them moments, does that make sense? And I just wanted us to sit down, and that's what we've done. And I've done that with Butler, did it with Mark Heffron when he won the British last year, and also Natasha. So, I mean, I want to enjoy the win, just that moment with them, and then let them, it's all about them and their families and enjoy it. And I'll just go home and have a cup of tea and watch the fight back.
Did the titles that you won with the fighters make you feel validated yourself as a coach, or is it the fighters that you shaped as people now?
I don't think the titles validated. I still don't feel. I put a post about Natasha the other day, not getting her flowers still. Still don't feel she gets her flowers. I still don't feel there's an appetite for anyone to discuss the work that we've done in the gym over the years, or what we've done in Manchester, is both as amateur, professional, or over the academy. But like anything, everyone always seems to get the flowers when they've passed away. It's nice for people to get them when they're alive. I think it's only now when you see people. I'm a huge Alex Ferguson fan. When he stepped away, what he was doing at the time and how hard it's been for Manchester United to win a league title, and how easy he made it look with like a makeshift starting 11 at times, beating good teams like Arsenal. So, yeah, I think it's moulding the individuals. I think I've been very blessed to work with the right kids. When people come, I always give them a month's trial. But if you look at Anthony Crawler, Scott Quigg, the Smiths, Natasha Jonas, Scott Cardle, Jose Burton, Callum Johnson, they're all kids that when you walk down the street, I always say this in the gymnasium when people come and joining, this is the kid that I want in the gym. So years ago, 2 old ladies would sit at the gate at the front of the house and they'd chat. The most was swept up or whatever. And they go, I'll talk about the weather. And then Johnny walks down the road. That Johnny would say to the 2 ladies, good morning, ladies. And they go, good morning, Johnny, bye-bye. And as lad got past, they'll go, that's Sandra's son. What a lovely lad. Isn't he a lovely lad? Nice. I said, oh, there's another lad that walks down the street, attitude, swagging, spitting. And then the ladies sort of like quiet and a bit nervous about him. And they go, yeah, Sandra's done a great job there, hasn't she, the state of him. I like the first kid. And I think every kid that I've had is that first kid, and it's how they carry themselves outside of the ring as much as inside, and what they've all gone on and done. Crawler, you wouldn't think he was a boxer. Tasha, you wouldn't think they were a boxer. Callum Smith, they're just nice kids. And
you clearly set a precedent for respect for yourself and for the other team members of the gym. You know, you mentioned those comparisons with Sir Alex Ferguson. Didn't you have a policy where you said, you wouldn't turn up late to the airport for a flight. You wouldn't turn late to a train station for a train. So there's no way in hell you're turning late for this training session.
100%, that's how it is. I just think it's a lack of disrespect. What happened once, we used to go Dovestones on a Saturday morning, and it was hard for sometimes. You had Scott Tidal travelling from Blackpool, you had the Smiths from Liverpool, and some from Manchester, some nearer than others, but it's still a trek to go to Dovestones, Saddleworth up there. So you're up there Saturday morning at 6:30. I'm there one morning, a few haven't turned up, only one or two have turned. Well, absolutely spitting feathers, fuming. Now, what I've always said is, if you can't make it, text me.
Yeah.
Drop a text, say, listen, Joe, I've woke up not feeling well, or Joe, I can't make it in the morning, but it's just manners. So anyway, they didn't. Absolutely fuming. So I thought, right, all right then. Went in the gym. Why you didn't turn up? Oh, well, this. So all right then. So they knew I wasn't happy. So I said, listen, Dovestones, next Saturday, boom, boom. And I said to them, you've all got to go, turn up. So that was it. I thought, I'll get you back. So anyway, they all went up. I didn't go.
You were going to say that.
I didn't go. So then my phone starts going at 6:30. Hi, Joe, where are you? Just ignored it. 7:15. Should we get off? Are you on the way? What should we do? Should we do the run or whatever? So they're asking me, they've travelled all the way there, should I do the run? So my mentality is, well, you're there, you might as well do it. But just blanked them. So I blanked them all weekend. And then they came in on Monday, what happened to you? And I said, now you know how it feels. Never ever do that again. So we both can play that game. And that's how it was.
You showed them that for sure. You taught them a lesson.
It's vice versa. And I've said, if I said to you, you had to be at the airport for this time for a plane, you don't just turn up when it departs. You're there 2 hours early. Scott Quigg, I'd tell him, Jim, 9 o'clock. He's there at 8:30. Natasha, I'll say 10:30. She's 20 to 11. I think there must have been something to do with that M62 every morning. Do you know what I mean? But her timekeeping's improved since we moved to Moss Side, believe it or not. Yeah, so she's in a lot earlier. But I just think it's just a matter of respect and just being professional and being good. Do you know what I mean? You don't come into a gym and stressed and rushing. Get up. If it's a rush, get up a hour earlier and set the day off well. Have a little 20 minutes before you leave, nice and calm. You don't want to be going from 0 to 100 straight away and coming at the gym and go about your work.
The man management side of things as well, I know that you respect Sir Alex a lot for that, and you need it in your gym as well, because saying one thing to Anthony might not work for Scott and it might not work for Tasha. So they all have their own individual personalities and they all need to be spoken in their own way. Was that the case? Did you have certain mechanisms of the way to deliver messages to each fighter?
Yeah, listen, it has to be. I think when you're in a gymnasium, everyone in a life has an ego. Do you understand? Everyone, me, you, everyone has an ego. But it's managing that. And for me as a coach, I have to know how to push your buttons. I know what gets you riled and what gets you upset. And I think as a coach, you have to learn about them. As a person, you've got to understand their backgrounds, their family life, where they're coming from, and what can trigger you and what can't trigger you. Different things trigger you, whether it's just hypothetically, Dumbo could set you off, or I'm terrible for watching things like Britain's Got Talent or X Factor. I'm in tears with them sod stories. I'm a shocker for it.
Yeah. Think of you as that.
No, Billy. I always say to the missus, God, imagine us in Gogglebox, we'd be squawking all the time. So, but that's it. I hate all that type of story. Joe, when it's comic relief, turn it over, I can't. It's so you've got to understand everybody's trigger. So that's it. And like anything, sometimes people need an arm around them. Some people, it's the carrot or the stick, isn't it? And Tasha knows that. Sometimes Tasha will walk in the gym and go, who's pissed on these chips? And they'll go, don't know. And so everyone's sort of like around like that. And then all of a sudden, I'm not. But it's it's just understanding them. And some people might have, we're talking about grown men, they could have left the house this morning with a proper barney with the missus, do you know what I mean? Or some ain't feeling well, or the child's not well at school, or whatever. I always try and say, keep what's outside got off away from the gym, and I won't bring my rubbish to the gym. But sometimes you've got to know your student and your fighter. And I think man management is key. It's all right being a coach, but man managing, knowing how to get the best out of your fighter, knowing how to push the buttons, and knowing when they're stressed and being able to look after them in a certain way. Like I say, coaches have always been known for being like a a counsellor, a priest, do you know what I mean? A divorce counsellor, do you know what I mean? There's loads of stuff, do you know what I mean? As well as just being a boxing coach. But that's key. And I always, more so with Ferguson when he was coming through with that squad that time, you had Beckham and the story of him turning up and telling Sharp, then get out of the house when they're having a party. And just managing them as they were coming through, because obviously all their egos were beginning to become big names, becoming internationals. I was watching the overlap this week and the way that Brian Clough told Stuart Pearce that he'd been England captain and he came in played for England, and Clough was saying to him, how do you think you played? He went, all right, and Clough said to him, well, I thought you were shit. I thought you were shit, son. And he said, you've got an advert in my programme about electrical company, and Pearce said, yeah, I'm a qualified electricians and I've had it in the programme working. He said, well, you're a fraud. So Pearce said, well, I'm a fraud. He said, well, if my missus phones up now, you're not coming out, are you? And he goes, no, it's my brother. So he said, he's a fraud as a player now and he's a fraud as an electrician. And he said, listen, there's my missus's kettle. It needs fixing. I've not got a phone up. You do it. I know it now and I want it done by the end of this session. And Pearce fixed the kettle for his wife. But it was all about taking you from up there, thinking you're playing for England, and bringing you back down. And I think that has to be the case sometime with boxers as well.
And we know that you were built from success from the day one of your coaching career. You've always been driven, tunnel visioned for success. But for a coach as successful as you, how were your coping mechanisms for dealing with defeat? What were your go-to ways of dealing with it? Because no one likes to lose, no one likes defeat in their lives in any aspect. What was it like for yourself? Horrible,
hate it, still hate it now, absolutely hate it. It's because it meant so much to me. There was one this year, Macaulay versus Tyler Denner, and I was absolutely screwing about it because I just didn't feel he got looked after in the fight by the referee. And if the referee had done his job, Macaulay would have won that fight, and that would have changed his life from a building site to boxing, sponsorship, everything else. And he's got his own issues. Do you know what I mean? His boy was born and with a condition, and it's just them little breaks that you need. So I feel it more because I want it as much as they do, and they feel that. And I think that's why the fighters respond, because they feel, listen, if you put your colours to the mast with me, I'm with you all the way. Defeats over the years. Crawler caught me breaking my heart out with John Murray losing to Brandon Rios. So it was just like, I just hate it. Natasha losing. Getting knocked out, driving home in the car, and her crying, a grown woman crying, and it's got to go home to a daughter who saw her mum got knocked out, and it's just horrible. So there is really bad times. How do I deal with it? I don't know really. I just try and I call it Mourinho it. Just take the medal off and on to the next one, and just try and forget about it. I remember Scott Quigg when he lost to Carl Frampton, and he used to come in the gym and he said, "Have you watched it yet?" And then a few weeks later, "Have you watched it yet?" No, and he thought I was being ignorant. But one day I just said, "Scott, why would I want to sit down and watch you get beat?" No. I remember what went on in the fight, and I've got an idea. Your jaw got snapped, and that's it, and you did your best. And I don't want to watch that. It's too painful and too hurtful. And that's it. And I think some of the losses in the career have been like that. There's been losses that I've been frustrated with where I thought we should have won. But then you just go thinking, there's losses that we've taken, like Kroller Lomachenko, you just have to put your hands up and go, you can't do nothing about that. We just lost to a super finger. But then there's losses where we've lost and I thought, nah, I don't know what you sat here crying for. You skipped training, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And I just, Joe, inside Jed, you think, nah, you got what you deserve.
Would you tell them that?
No, I won't, because they're in the right place at the moment, and I don't need to earn them because they know.
They're already hurting, aren't they?
They're already hurting, and they know they cut corners, and I feel if you cut corners, you don't get it out. But it's them thing that, as I said to McCauley, Jose Burton getting beat. I've had him since age 10. It's shocking seeing him get beat like that. So them type of things are really horrible. How I cope with them, I don't really. I just try to move on to the next one. I do have my moments where it hurts and I have a little breakdown and I cry and I tear about it. But yeah, after that, then it just hardens your boxing, doesn't it? Just hardens you.
Do you have to hide those breakdowns from the fighters, or do you do it collectively with them?
No, sometimes you just can't help your emotions. I remember I was a bit upset when Macklin lost, and God, it sounds like I cry all the time here, doesn't it? I know it's just like Macklin in the ring. And I just thought, why? The whole world's watching. Everyone's saying we've won this. Scorecards, I mean, Dan Raphael, HBO, we've won it. Why has it not happened? And Crawler and Liam Smith came over and consoled me a little bit. And I just thought, it's not my time. It's not your time neither. Things happen for a reason. And like Crawler Perez won. And I just thought, how has he not won that? And I just thought, it's not your time. But it's no point sulking about it. Let's go back and make sure next time is our time. And that's how we deal with it, really. Coming through at Moss Side, Champs Camp, and then also being a shop steward for the Union at Manchester Airport. So when we used to go to pay rises and talks and negotiations and stuff like that, I've got quite familiar, used to enjoy that, to be fair, and I think that side of me is still in there, the old arse, do you know what I mean, fighting for rights for fighters and stuff like that. I really need to move on, don't I? But I harbour that Union shop steward mentality a little bit. It's all about the fighters, and I understand negotiations, but me and you can